What is up, everyone? Today I'm going to try and help you guys get ready for SimCity 5 by going over some key SimCity concepts in SimCity 4. Bear with me because this game is still rather buggy. Alright, so let's just jump into a new city. Right, let's just call it... Oops, wrong buttons. Mayor mode, let's do this. New Maxis land. New Maxis. Okay. So one of the most important aspects with SimCity is with town planning itself is to try and incorporate mixed use development. That is where you have a difference, mix up zones between commercial, residential and industrial. Now ideally we would have mixed use in SimCity 5 that would consist of vertical mixed use, which is shops on the bottom, housing on top, etc. Nice way to get both of those little different types of zones in the same area, but unfortunately we're not. So let's try and practice with horizontal mixed use development, which is basically a mixture of commercial and residential in the same vicinity. Now I like to start off with a railway, just a little simple line like that. Railways will come in handy later on in the game when you start connecting up your regions. And let's just get a railway station here. So you basically want to build like a small commercial city centre. This is going to expand as your city grows as well, so it's quite important to make sure it's connected prior to expanding, because coming in later when you have to start knocking down buildings is going to be a bit of a hassle, and it's just so much easier to get it out of the way now. Another few important things is to just get a supply or freight train station, as they're called in this game. A freight station in there as well, because we'll have our industrial around this area as well. Alright. A few other good things to do is just put some parks in. In the commercial areas it's better to go with plazas. Just right outside the train station like that. Later on that will start bringing in the pedestrian space around buildings and will give you some good customers. Now I would start on with medium density straight away. There's no rush to start building super big at the moment. You don't have the demand to, and all it is just going to be an unnecessary cost. Okay, now early on you're going to have to start building industry, because that's how you're going to pull people into your city. It's going to be demanded straight away. Now in this game, or in SimCity 5, there isn't agricultural zones yet, so we're going to have to work around that by boosting the industry in our city. Now a nice way to do this is to simply put it just across the road from the commercial centers, but nowhere near residential, because the pollution from cheap industry is going to annoy the residents and lower the land value, which means more crime, just more pain in the bum things. So just try and avoid it now, and later on in the game when you educate your Sims more, this will be prime real estate to turn into high-tech industry, which is air pollution free and will definitely help you out. Now another thing to remember when you're putting this kind of stuff in is to keep the lots small, otherwise the buildings aren't going to be able to get road access, which they don't like. They like their road access. Now in terms of education, you can take a bit of a gamble at the start and try and fit a college into your city. These things will definitely help reach high-tech industry a lot faster, which is what you want to achieve, because that at the end of the day will get you air pollution free cities over heavy industry, and plus they will attract richer Sims, which will give you cleaner power through the solar power plant, which you can unlock. Now as you go further away from the center, which I hope to make the railway station, you just want to decrease the density of these shops. So make it low density like this, and make this one high density. Now make sure if you're using SimCity 4 to make this cost and bring it right down, because you're not going to have anywhere near 10,000 people trying to fit into this college. So now we need to expand our railway and connect our residential suburbs up. And the one thing we need to think of is main roads, because I'm just using the default SimCity 4, so I don't have the cool little avenues you get when you get the deluxe edition, which hopefully you guys have, because that is a bit of a help. So I'm going to try and make my railways my main roads, but also these roads here my main roads as well, that will connect into the residential units, residential neighborhoods I should say. So let's just extend this out. So what you would do is grab this railway and you just want to drag it straight off the edge of this map. It's going to be more use for you to be connected faster, and it's probably worth it as well to just bring this railway line up. just connect this up. Now in this game I like to just put a central railway depot in, say about there, and then track about 8 blocks each side once you put in your schools and everything else like that. So let's get our schools down, because that's going to be next. Schools and health center. Okay. So one important thing to remember is water. In SimCity 5 you're going to have to be using the natural water in the groundwater that's available. So think about where you place your town first. In SimCity 4 that doesn't matter as much, you can just plonk it wherever you please. So think about that in SimCity 5, but in SimCity 4 you can just consistently keep supplying your town with unlimited water towers and water pumps. Now early on in the game it probably will pay not to have too much high density. It will be a bit of an unnecessary cost for you, seeing as it costs quite a lot to put in. As you can tell, the price is through the roof. And the further you move away from the schools, the lower density you need. Alright, so here I am working on my second neighborhood. I might want to put a nice little park in there and some shops. These can be medium density early on. It's probably best to keep it that way. Something nice to easy to manage, and you can eventually upscale them. Another important thing to remember is water. Plonk a water tank in there as well. Now in SimCity 4 it's important to keep everything connected with zoning, as that's how power is shared. They are shared between lots. So you can pretty much get away with just doing something nice and quick like that. Now electricity. What do you do for electricity? Now, early on in the game it is such an advantage to go with wind power. It's really cheap, it's green, no pollutants. Well, it's not necessarily cheap, but it's cheap enough to get you started off with, and it's pretty easily manageable as well. Now don't forget about piping. Now this is strictly SimCity 4 techniques here. This is actually just a pretty general one. Just making sure every bit of land has got water to it. You probably have to tweak this later on in the game as well, as you'll see. Now something to remember is if you do go with agricultural, as sometimes I do when you do this setup, agricultural chews up your water and it pollutes it as well. And that's something to remember. Agriculture will give you nice early growth, but it will also chew up your water supply. Right, so we've unlocked the church so far. You can see our pond there right there, and now we've got the graveyard. This can be, now these slots are quite interesting because they're quite good fillers in between residential and industrial, because they don't really care where they're put on the ground. How well is our education system going? So let's just check some of these graphs. Now you see it's kind of useful to use these stats, and it might be more useful in SimCity 5, the way that they present them. You can tell my education is pretty piss poor everywhere, but that's because it hasn't been available for too long. So let's just keep the game rolling and we'll see how everything turns out. Now some useful things in this game are these city ordinances. Now these cost you, but they do have benefits in your neighborhoods, in your little town. Now, some of the more important ones I would say are the junior sports program and the pro reading campaign. These are really important just for boosting education, and they're pretty cheap early on, relatively, so putting them in is quite a good idea. Let's go with junior sports, so it's the more expensive one. I think the pro reading campaign will do us quite good for now. Okay, so I've skipped ahead a few years here. We're still turning over about $100 a month with the education, and we're slowly starting to see some commercial demand come in. And I've pumped up the taxes on the dirty industry because it's costing me more than it should at the moment. Let's make sure everything here is under control. Healthcare is really important because since we're trying to keep low or high density clusters around transport systems, healthcare goes through the roof, and eventually you're going to have to build a hospital. But that comes in way later in the game, so no point getting flustered about it now. It is just something to think about. Okay, so here's my sort of detailed sketch for my expanded commercial areas. You're probably looking at me and wondering why I put industrial in here. Now I'm hoping that the high value of the land around this train station is only going to pull in manufacturing or high-tech industry rather than dirty, which has a very low demand at the moment. So I'm hoping we get a switch around from that. We get some high-tech industry right in the center here, which doesn't take away from from the, it doesn't have an impact around it. So let's just see how this plays out. So you can see just by putting that little bit in industry in here, you see we got some high-tech industry. That's really good to see. Some manufacturing, which isn't too bad, but it's better to have high-tech. You can see we've had a residential spike, so there's plenty of demand to move in here. We could probably play on this and upgrade some of our residential lots, make them high density. So for this we'll just turn on zoning. So there we have it, guys. It's just part one. Roughly about 8,000 people turning over a nice decent property of $300. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how to start off in SimCity 4. A nice little setup like this, and then next time we'll start looking at how to deal with this air pollution problem in the middle and move on from dirty industry into high-tech industry.